Do you want bigger profits? It's time to consider bigger real estate rehabs. Welcome to part 4 on my 10-part series on how to increase your wealth through real estate investing. All right, so in the last video in this series, I talked about how to get big profits through flipping. In this video, I'm gonna talk about how to do it at a bigger scale. All right, last time we talked just about doing cosmetic rehabs. So you're gonna go into properties and change things like the flooring, the kitchens, the bathrooms, and do basic repairs. The advantage of those is they're quick. You can turn them really quick, 90 days on some of them, maybe a little bit longer, depending on the complexity and how fast the market is moving. You know, typically on a flip, people are gonna make 25 to 75K, normally in that range. If you wanna make 6-figure profits though, you need to consider deals where you can add square footage. Typically, this means you're gonna bump the house back, maybe bump it back and go up, but it's gonna take longer, right? You're adding square footage, you're gonna actually have to go through a lot more planning and a lot more permitting, which we'll talk about. And because of that, it's gonna take longer, it's gonna cost more, but your rewards are gonna get bigger. Like with the rehabs, you wanna make sure you've got at least a 25% margin, all right? You wanna leave room for error, especially if it's the first time doing it. So again, if it's a deal that it's gonna cost you about 500K, you wanna make sure it's gonna sell for 125,000 more than that, 625. You want that 25% margin. That's your safety margin, that's your profit margin. As you get more experience, you know, maybe there's a time where you'll compromise on that and go a little bit. When you're starting out, it's better to play it safe. So it starts with studying the comparables, right? Like a simple rehab, you don't wanna be the most expensive on the street or neighborhood. You wanna aim for somewhere above the middle, but not too far, all right? You don't wanna be the first guy putting on an addition in a neighborhood and being in unproven, uncharted territory. You want lots of supporting comparable sales to know you're getting yourself into a good deal. Now, you're gonna have to have a longer planning and permitting process. So if you've never done this before, again, make sure you talk to 2 or preferably 3 contractors, as well as architects and engineers. Because if you're adding square footage, you're gonna have to hire an architect and engineer. That's a process you do up front. They're gonna have to go in for permits with the city or county or both, and it's gonna take longer. So you gotta plan for a longer time. Some common ways to add square footage are, you know, bumping the house out. So you know, increasing to the sides or to the back, maybe sometimes to the front. That is less rare. You can add stories as well. That's a little bit more complex. It's gonna require some more planning, but not much more than adding the square footage. So don't be afraid of that. You know, those are the 2 most common ways to add square footage. You're either gonna increase the building's footprint or go higher. So you're gonna need to talk to an architect and an engineer, make sure, and it's good to, by the way, have a steady period on the deal, right? When you go under contract to buy it, make sure you have a steady period, a feasibility study, where you have a week, 2 weeks to get basic reviews done by architects, engineers. Make sure you're allowed to do the work that will get you to the values you have calculated. All right, so make sure you have that steady period. Verify with some architects and some engineers that the work can get done, that they'll be able to get permitting, that the zoning is correct, right? You gotta plan for a longer period. Like before, you wanna start that work as soon as you get the deal under contract. A lot of times in the deals we do, we'll get a 60-day close with the right to extend it another 30 days or 60 days. So we might have 2 to 4 months of time before we actually have to close on the deal. Well, a lot of times we can actually submit for permits and get them done, get them approved and stamped prior to us closing or shortly thereafter so that the work can begin immediately. It eliminates a lot of the downtime. All right, so if you can push closing out, do that, get your work started on planning, talk to the engineers, talk to the architects, and get that done as soon as possible. All right, get those permits done when the seller is paying to own the property, not you, if possible. Like before, you wanna start selling the property as soon as possible as well. Now, since you're making major changes to the property, it's going to require more of a sales effort. So if you're an agent, you'll have to do some of this yourself. If you're not an agent, talk to your agent, make sure they're doing this, but you're gonna wanna go to people that can take the engineer's floor plans, the architect's floor plans and designs, and turn those into floor plans that the buyers will understand. Right, where they can place furniture on them, dimensions on them. You can get renderings done, interior and exterior. That will help your buyers get an idea of what the home will look like, and it will help you do a pre-sale, which can, again, save you time and money and de-risk the project. So on these types of rehabs, it's not uncommon for the planning and permitting stage to take 4 to 6 months. And remember, part of that can be done when you are in that contract period before you've closed on it. So that time period though is usually 4 to 6 months on the plans, the permits, and the build will typically be 4 to 6 months as well. So you could be looking up to a year. So make sure you account for that time plus the time to sell it when you are doing your budget. You never want to overestimate sales cost or underestimate the expense or the time of the deal. I went more into depth on that in part 3 on doing the simple rehabs, but it's even more important when you're doing these bigger deals. If you do these bigger rehabs successfully, you're gonna make anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 per deal. In part 5 in this series, I'm gonna talk about how you can make the profits even bigger by increasing the density. So hit the subscribe button. I'll see you next time.